On to our next case, which is actually still evolving. This is a very unusual one. This is about a woman from Jupiter, Florida, who has disappeared, is presumed dead, and her husband has been arrested. This is the case of husband David Anthony. He was arrested in Las Cruces, New Mexico on March 31st. What is interesting about that is that on March 20th, his wife, Gretchen Anthony, disappeared. And apparently he was the last one to see her alive. So Loni, on a case that is really so fresh, if you will, only a few weeks, and there is no body, the police must have something. Otherwise, how could they have filed murder charges without a body?
Right. And a lot of times in cases like this, law enforcement will actually wait until they find the body, at least longer than 2 weeks. It's only been, essentially 2 weeks or so. But in this case, they must have other information besides what you need from the body. And remember, when you find the body, that there's so much evidence there that tells the cause of death, perhaps, when it happened, how it happened, who did it. But there must be other evidence that they have, either from his statements or other witnesses, perhaps, cell phone data. And then we also know that they just found her car yesterday. So her car was found in the parking lot of a medical center in Jupiter, which is their hometown. And there could be a lot of evidence in there as well.
We don't know much about what was going on with this couple, but we know a little bit. We know that they recently filed for divorce. And that is usually the kind of thing that, always perks the ears of investigators, because how many times do we see this, that divorce or infidelity and jealousy are often the causes of, these murders between couples or married couples.
Exactly. And I always try to warn women who are in, domestic violence situations or do, feel unsafe in that situation. It's at the time when you're trying to leave. It's at the time when you say, I'm leaving, I'm getting divorced. You start making plans to split. That's when the violence and the danger goes up even higher, because, all of a sudden this person, your abuser, realizes, wait a minute, they're serious. They're actually going to try and leave me. And that's when you have to be extremely careful.
They were married in March of 2015 in Nevada, and then they filed for divorce at the end of February. And apparently they had both signed the papers for the divorce petition sometime in January. The divorce remains open, but I would say that's actually moot right now, because he's a widower, whether he killed her or not. Police have, been very, very vague about what was going on between them. They've been very vague about the individuals themselves. I find that interesting. But one thing we do know is a little bit of history on David Anthony prior to his wife's disappearance. And this is where the creepy stuff starts to come out. So Palm Beach County authorities say that David Anthony was arrested by Riviera Beach police on March 15th. Remember, she disappeared on the 20th. So this is 5 days before her disappearance. And that he was charged with resisting an officer with violence. Now, according to published reports, David Anthony was arrested in the early hours of March 15th after someone reportedly said he was acting suspiciously around young girls in a public beach on Singer Island. And they said that he was sweating profusely and that he was approaching 15-year-old girls. That is just wrong, and that is creepy, because this guy is 43 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of red flags go up there. And then the officer said also that apparently while they were keeping an eye on him, they noticed that the black electric tape had been used to alter his vehicle tag and turning a 6 to an 8. And so they asked him about that. And he said that perhaps it was his 12-year-old stepdaughter who was responsible, because she allegedly liked to play with tape. And so then, all the bells were going off for these police officers as they were watching him. So he tried to leave. And so things escalated. And when they tried to arrest him and put handcuffs on him, one had to actually hold him at gunpoint because he was resisting arrest. And when the other officer went to try and put handcuffs on him, he reportedly leaped into his car and repeatedly slammed the door on the officer's arm. I mean, that's...
And that officer had to go to the hospital because of the injuries on her arm. That is very, very strange behavior. And then, so what ends up happening is he spends a few days in jail because he finally posts his bond on March 18th. That is now 2 days before his wife's disappearance. And one can only wonder, did they maybe have an argument over what just happened, what really happened? Yeah. Isn't that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, too, I think that it's interesting that the divorce papers were signed in January. They were filed in February, and still they hadn't been completed. It was still an open case. So perhaps, this arrest and him going to, being taken into custody and then getting out, and then she finds out about it. And that might have just been like the last straw. Like she says, I am done. This is it. We're pushing forward. We're done with this. And, that might have been the trigger. Who knows?
Well, this is a developing case. Hopefully we'll learn a lot more information after the authorities examine her car, and we will keep you posted and do updates. And